Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone. Please, I invite you to get your chat handy. We would love to see where you're coming in from. Hello, welcome. Welcome, Nikki. How are you? Dora, Denisha. Great to have you. Good to see you again, Faith. Angela, welcome. Please let us know. Take a moment. Let us know where you're calling in from, everyone. All right, more are
And maybe
coming.
how much snow everyone's expecting to get this weekend,
I
right? That
know.
seems to be the big chat of the day.
I know. I've been super jealous about my West Coasters, Tammy. With
Yep,
all,
and your Southerners, right? Mexico City. No snow in
oh, and
Mexico
my
City.
Southerners. Oh, Tampa, Florida. I'm a little envious of you too there, Denisha. How are you? Welcome. So glad you could join us this afternoon. All right. Let's see. Tampa. And we know Mark is Mexico as well. Avitas, California. Maya, California. Kelly, where are you calling in from? Oh, Belize. Awesome.
Pedro
Awesome.
Belize.
Belize. I think we have one Brazilian coming on board. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, everyone, we are oh, Texas. Texas, Nikki from Texas. Amazing. Thank you. Oh, that's again more warm weather. I just can't take it, you guys. Well,
I
you're
think
heating me.
Texas is getting some snow, so we'll
Uh,
see.
mm. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Oh, not warm this weekend. Is that so? Okay. All right, New York City Faith, we know you're chilling out just like I am out here in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, everyone, I am so excited to welcome you to our third edition of the Disrupted Work Reimagined Unconference E-Series. This has been an amazing journey for all of us. You are welcome to our writers' room. Now, I want you to look around. This isn't just a webinar. This has become a production studio. And whether you know it or not, you are the executive producers of the highest stakes drama on television, Your Workplace. I'm Tiffany Odutoye. I go by Tiffany O. And today I'm your showrunner. You know, the show I'm talking about, it's called The Young and the Reckless. Or maybe as the workplace turns. It's the show where the budget was cut, the timelines are impossible, and the characters, well, let's just say the characters, you know, the cast has some strong personalities, right? Sometimes the show is a hit, and sometimes, it kind of needs to be canceled. But right now, the ratings are tanking, the ratings are low, and we have to do something about this. That's why we are all here. We've heard about engagement, but engagement is a feeling, activation is a result. So today we're going to be talking about not just HR policies, but stepping into the writer's room to fix the talent crisis. In the next hour, we're going to look at this crisis not from a policy failure, but as a script that just needs to be rewritten. And in case you haven't figured it out, you're not just the audience. Let me invite you to take a look at the cast that we've asked to come and help us fix this major problem. We have a specialist production crew to help us save the season. They're going to help us look at real world disaster. And more importantly, they're going to direct a better response. Now, we have three very distinct lenses. And for the same story, I want you to meet them and just sort of begin to see things through their eyes. Our head writer, hi, Robyn, if you'll pop her up on screen. Now, Robyn Hatcher, she can spot a toxic storyline from page one. And as an actress, and a writer for two daytime soap operas, she's used to creating the drama. But now, as a professional speaker, a coach, a trainer, she just works with organizations and individuals to lessen the drama. All right, Avetis. Hi, Avetis
Hello.
Antaplyan. How are
I'm
you?
great and I'm better
Awesome.
now. Thank you
Awesome.
for that
Awesome.
intro.
Now, Avetis knows exactly who fits the role and who's just reading the lines. He brings expertise needed to guide hiring choices or course correct when the internal systems just lead you down the wrong path. And sometimes you just have to recast the team. Okay, Lori Crever, welcome. This is our director. Hi, Lori. Now, Lori knows how to get an Oscar-worthy performance out of a burnt-out actor. She's a boss, a professional improv, and she also owns the megaphone. And she's an employee engagement expert and an author of the book Protege Power, A Roadmap to Mentorship. Now, our director, Lori, is joined by, we couldn't have a show without a set of executive producers. So we're going to call them up now. Our executive producers, Tammy Alvarez, and our co-producer, Mark Monchek. Hello, guys. How are you? Now,
Welcome, everyone.
yes, now Tammy, she's the founder and CEO of CWC, a best-selling author and a professional keynote speaker. If you've seen her on stage, she lights it up.
Recording in progress.
As a former Wall Street exec, Tammy believes that everyone deserves to love Mondays again. Now, CWC's mission is to help 1 million people learn how to reignite that spark in their careers and businesses by 2034. And if I recall correctly, when the Disrupted Work Reimagine Unconference started, it was disrupted, just a disrupted conference. She started the whole thing in 2024. And so now, fast forward, we're at version 2.0 of it with our co-producer, Mark. Now, Mark, he's the co-founder of this whole thing and the author of Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Disruption. And he's the founder of Opportunity Lab, which provides strategy, leadership, and culture for businesses that not only do good in the world, but really make a difference. He'll be setting the stage for the entire season. We'll give them both the stage, please.
Thank you, Tiffany, and welcome, everyone. So glad to see you, some for the third time, and some of you for the first time. And I want to give you a reason to stay because I'm sure your phone's going off the hook, your emails are blaring, there's all kinds of things. But here's the situation. If keeping your team switched on, bought in, aligned, and activated feels like you are pushing a boulder uphill every single day, this DWRU episode is exactly what you need. Leaders today are running the gauntlet of disengagement, burnout, AI skill gaps and fear, friction from our multi-generation workforce, quiet quitting, change fatigue, and just the constant stress of leading through the volatile world and just surviving the volatile world that we're all in today. But guess what? Everyone here still has a business to run. We've got customers to serve, investors to satisfy, and a mission to deliver. So let's talk about what we need to do. And Tiffany really led in a little bit in terms of the things we're going to talk about today is not how to get better employee engagement. Because we have 30 years of data, thanks to Gallup, that proves that focusing on employee engagement doesn't work. So we have to do something different. We have to write a different script. And when we flip the script to talent activation, this is where the magic happens. And fortunately, we have 3 experts here today to give you new points of view, a different way of approaching this. And you're going to walk away with the ability to have some action items that you can take back to your office this afternoon. And so we're really excited to spend this moment with you, peeling back the layers on how to crack that talent code, because being able to activate your talent could be the difference between your organization thriving versus just surviving during the disruption. So can't wait to see where this ends up today. And Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Tiffany. Welcome, everybody. Tammy and I met about a year and a half ago, and she found me through my book, Culture of Opportunity, How to Grow Your Business in an Age of Disruption. And we found we had a common passion to help mid-market leaders build great companies and make a difference in the world. And that's why you're here today, to not just experience a one-off thing, but really to be part of a community that supports and helps each other in dealing with all the disruptions that we're seeing. So I want you to dive in today. I'm not going to say any more because there's so much for us to do. This is a very unique program. Engage, listen, and support. And after this is over, use what you learned to make your workplace and your work better. Tiffany, back to you.
Wow. Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have our executive producer team. But before we fix the show, we have to look at the footage. But before we do that, I'm going to invite you to pop a note in the chat of what you heard Tammy introduce as reasons for staying. Which one is your reason? We'll be looking to hear from you. What is driving you? What brought you here today? What are you hoping to get out of the session? And pop a yes in the chat if all of those themes resonate with you. Okay. Now let's see if we can look back at the scene. Here is the plot line. Oh, yes, we see the chat heating up. So we have a fintech company. They're a startup and they're scaling globally. We just call them ABC Global. They're relaunching a foreign exchange application, very technical. They have a technical team, and about out of all of that, I want you to imagine how high the stakes are now moving into a new industry. After years of being out of the business, they're stepping back into the spotlight and they want to make a big splash. High visibility. This thing really has to work. And they also have a buyer, a client on the at the table at the ready that they've been building this to pilot and demo for. Um, if they do not succeed, this whole thing gets shut down. Okay, enter stage left. We hired Pat. Now, Pat is a literal rock star. On paper, Pat is the superstar from a Fang giant. Now, pop a yes in the chat if you know what Fang stands for, or if you know one of the major companies that's in that Fang group that on that stock exchange. I'm just looking here. Yep, yes, everybody knows about Fang. Okay. You also know if you're in a Fang company, there's lots of resources there. But even a rock star can fail from an organization like that if they're miscast for the scene. The crisis hit when a major customer begins to go live, begins to attend this go live of the application, and the marketplace is turning. The company's starting to lose business, lose money. This app just is not performing the way that it should. It's a flagship client, and Pat didn't just have a bad call and a bad experience at this go live demo. Pat experienced a total psychological cave in. Uh, they hit this what we call this lower brain state. They froze, dropped the phone, and later lashed out at the internal ops team. This thing just went awry. This isn't just a performance issue, it's a five-alarm fire for the business. The client is ready to walk, the internal team demoralized, and the executive team, well, they have to fix the script before the series gets canceled. Okay, so here's enters our casting crew, the role of each. I'll outline for you. Robyn, we're using this whole idea or concept of the show Bible. And in writing an episode, where does this fit? Avetis, please, our casting director, he's in charge of hiring all the actors to align with the vibe and the culture. Avita, take us into casting. How do you build the right team? And Lori, as she enters, she's going to help us as well. So, writers, we're waiting to hear from you. Please walk us through uh, what we should be doing here.
Well, that was a complete disaster. The fact that he could not perform in front of that really important client really just threw me for a loop. I did not expect that at all because he was such a great hire. I mean, I thought he had everything. His resume was wonderful. His recommendations were wonderful. So many people said so much about him. And now he's damaged the relationship with our client and he's damaged the relationship with our leadership team. So I'm not sure what went wrong, but after having written for two daytime soap operas, All My Children and One Life to Live, I got to tell you about the show Bible.
Okay.
Now, the show Bible and all TV and all of soap operas, you need a something that pulls everything together. The show Bible is the history and the experiences of everything that happened on that show, like the
Mm,
characters, the main themes, the plots, and the plot twists. Now, as I transitioned into workplaces, I realized that all workplaces also have a show Bible. Sometimes they call it their mission statement, sometimes they call it their company values, whatever it is that you call it. It's the history of everything that's happened on the teams, in the leadership train, how they got started, all of that, and all the leadership, the team. Now, what happens, however, is we also forget that each character, each worker, each employee has a show Bible, which is the experience that they bring to the
mm,
workplace, their
mm,
history, their communication style, their needs, and their triggers. And
mm,
what sometimes I guess what we fail to do is to realize that in a company, we need to study our show Bibles. Now, when I was working for the soaps, I could not study what was happening in the past or what was happening in the present or what was happening in the characters, because what would that do? That would totally mess up the plot of the show. I could write something that was totally off base. And if I did that, what would happen? I would get fired.
Mm.
And so in the workplace, the same thing happens. We often do things without studying the show Bibles of each of our employees and without really looking at what is in our own show Bible, what is in our history. Are our leaders really carrying that out? And I have a feeling that that's what happened in this situation. We did not update our show Bible to add this new division. We did not communicate what was in our old show Bible to Pat. We didn't talk about how important that client was. We didn't talk about how important client relationships were. So, of course, they didn't know how to act. We didn't talk about how volatile some of our clients could be. And so what happened is, and at the same time, we didn't really look at Pat's show Bible. What was his experience like? Where was he coming from? What kind of clients was he used to working with? And what was his triggers? What got him upset that we didn't see? I mean, I don't know where the fault lies, if there's fault, what we did wrong, but I think that is my idea. And, Avetis, you're right. He looked fantastic on paper, right?
He did. He did. Like you said, we have to take a step back. I know we all want to know what happened. We instinctively want to talk about the topics, the client impact, the huge mess up that happened. And these are all short-term containments, but I don't, and I know we want to know how to stabilize this, but I think we have to take a step back because damage control is what you do when the real problem started not much, it started much earlier. So when someone strong like this is hired and they struggle, I can guarantee the crisis isn't sudden. It's a visible moment of slow building mismatch. I saw this person's profile and resume. Terrific, like you said, right? But we have to take a step back and see what happened. If we don't understand how we got here, we'll solve it today. I guarantee it. We'll make a decision. We're all very smart, and we can recreate. We're going to end up recreating this in 6 months again. We're going to do it over and over and again. And we're going to end up doing what most companies are doing. They're in kind of firefighting mode at all times. So before we decide what we do with Pat now, we need to ask whether the outcome was predictable and what could have been done next time, right?
Mm.
So for me, it's I think I don't want any solutions now, but I think we skip this step often and we jump right into coaching, mentoring, or worse, sometimes we're just ready to exit the person out. This leads to repeating the same mistakes next time. Same thing's going to happen. It's just going to happen maybe at a smaller scale or worse off in a much, much higher scale.
Mm.
So, so for me, prevention lives in the hiring room. I think we have to go back and figure out what we did wrong. We validated the resume and the capability. And he, frankly, I mean, I see it now. He has a great pedigree and he interviewed well, I'm sure. You guys got a great team. But I think Tiffany mentioned in the beginning, he comes from a FANG company, large teams, a lot of resources, slower pace. He's also wasn't client facing. So we didn't validate our own environment, the pace, and the client exposure. And that's where I believe the problem started. That's just my
Interesting.
thoughts.
Interesting. We're going to come back to both of those ideas about looking at the past, the presence, and the characters, and also what happens in the hiring room. But before we do, Lori, how would you weigh in on this particular conversation? This is sort
As
of,
oh,
I'm sorry, thinking about the leader reaction, what we should be doing.
as the director of The Young and the Reckless, I am biased toward being on the side of all of my players, all of my cast. However, as one of the leaders of the show, I have to factor in the very disastrous ripple effects of Pat creating such a bad experience for a key client.
Mm.
Every once in a while, we see a talent gets brought in that, as Avetis and Robyn have pointed to, brings a lot of sizzle in the interview. But then we find out, do they have the steak, right? I have to say in conclusion right now, Tiffany, I took the situation to the network brass, which of course this client made a lot of noise. And unfortunately, 2 of the 5 of the executive leadership, they would like to fire Pat. So that is no surprise. That is one solution to this that's on the table.
Okay, so I have to put this to the audience. All right, so we're going to pop this to the audience. I'd like to invite our technical team to pull up our first poll. I'm curious, what in this current reality, not what you think, in your current reality, if this was your company, what would you do? The question is, when someone on your team starts to go off track, what's your first move? Are you like our team here? Do you talk with them directly, understand what happened? Do you get to the root cause, correct immediately, redirect, or do you let it slide and hope it sorts itself out?
Well, and Tiffany, we want to make sure that you answer the question of what you really do, not what you know you're supposed to do.
I
So
love
under pressure,
that.
that's a little bit different. So you've not voted yet. Make sure you've got some truth serum in there because these are anonymous polls.
Yes, thank you so much. And while you're at it, I would love for people to pop in the chat. Do you keep Pat or fire them? We let the chat blow up. Keep or fire is what we want to see in the chat. Keep or fire, one of the two. I'd love for our writing room to know what you all think. Okay, polls are in. Oh, keep. Some say keep. Okay, keep. One keep. All right. Oh, there's Pat. Pat has some people voting for him. All right. On this particular question, we'll go ahead and share our results. Most are saying you talk to them directly, try to figure out what happened, get to the root cause. You're in the right room with the right team because we're all on the same page with you today. It's time for us now to figure out exactly what happened. We see the crash, but we don't always really understand the mechanics behind it. Um, and sometimes we don't always understand the systems that were created for Pat to fail. Oh, I didn't share the results. Okay, let me pop the results up.
You
Here's the
did.
results. Oh, I did. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'll pull that down. Okay, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So now we see the mechanics. We heard what you said, and there is sometimes an opportunity for us to look at the systemic failures. Now to understand how we got from a FANG rock star to a dropped phone crisis, we need to go back to the original writers' meeting. Now I invite you to look at the original strategy through the eyes of our casting directors, our head writer, and our culture lead, and see what they possibly may have missed. Now, they gave you some insights into things, but we're going to dig into this just a little bit more as we begin to think about how we need to do a rewrite. We'll invite them back to the stage.
Okay, well, clearly Pat went off script, as we call it. We had everything in place. He went off script. And why do people go off script? Like I was saying before, when you have a show Bible, you've got somebody writing the outline, and then you give it to your leaders, right? To write a great script. And what happens if they don't know what's going on? They go off script. And this is what happened with Pat. And I feel like we were in such a rush because we were so excited. It was a shiny new object. It's like, how many of you have had this shiny new object? It's like you're creating a new AI platform. You're creating this fintech. We're creating this. It's like, let's go. And I think we all got so excited on the let's go that we didn't take everything into consideration. We didn't, first of all, we didn't update what our expectations were. We didn't update our expectations for Pat. We didn't update our expectations around our client information. We didn't communicate to our client that we had taken on 6 new leaders, 6 new roles. And so whenever anybody brings in new blood, it takes a while for them to get up to speed. And what did we do? We threw Pat right into the fire, for poor Pat. I feel like, those dreams that you have that
Hmm.
suddenly you're in a dream and somebody's expecting you to go on stage and say something. And it's like, wait, wait, wait. No one told me what the show was. No one told me what's going on. That's what it probably was like for Pat. You've just thrown me into this show and you didn't give me a really solid script. You didn't
Oh,
give me anything to work with.
okay,
So,
so
I mean, my
I'm
bad. We have to be careful on that.
yeah, so I'm hearing you say keep, don't fire.
Oh, yeah. I think, first of all, I know how expensive it is to fire and replace Pat. I mean, first of all, we'd have to give him a severance.
Uh,
We would have to train somebody else.
Yeah.
We'd have to bring Avitas in to find somebody else, and that's expensive, Avitas.
Correct.
And I mean, I think that we can work with Pat.
okay, all right. Okay, Avitas, well, we're looking back. What happened and what should we do? Keep or
Great,
fire?
great question. Robin talked about all the things we didn't do. I'll spend a few minutes talking about what I think we did, right? We treated pedigree as proof. And it's understandable, right? Big company backgrounds create instant credibility, especially at the level he was at. Past wins felt transferable. If he did it for this huge fan company, why can't he do it for our, where we're at in our game? And then, of course, the resume reduced perceived risk. You look at a profile, Ivy League schools, stable background, constantly growing and getting promoting. It makes sense why, one, we were attracted to, we ended up hiring, right? Um, we didn't test how Pat operates without layers. Remember how many layers he
Hmm.
has at the larger company he came from, how he makes decisions without, having everyone agree, how he performs when the systems disappear, people disappear. Remember how small our team is, and we've had some turnover. Um, so strong resumes make us feel safe, but they don't necessarily make us, right. We might have hired someone that just didn't fit in our environment. It's not his fault. It's our fault. As leaders, we put him in the wrong environment, right? So I think that's really important for us to know. And I think Robin mentioned this, but we might have optimized for speed over alignment. We got really excited. We had big deadlines. We had this go live. So what do? We went and hired someone, and everybody was excited, right? I mean, look at his pedigree, and it almost made us feel good and made us feel like we've got the right person.
Hmm.
It's clear we didn't hire for the environment, the pace and urgency that we have as a much smaller company to get this product to market, get this, product market fit figured out, and the ambiguity somebody has to work out of here, right? He's used to having really, really specific product requirements and notes and a team to, he had to do all this on his own, and then he's not used to being client facing. All
Hmm.
his customers were internal stakeholders, not external. And so I just see a lot of mismatches is what I see. I don't have a decision yet on whether we should
Ah.
let him go. I mean, is he the right person in the wrong seat and we could recast him? Or is he just not in the right environment at all? And we need to let this poor person go and find the right environment for himself. And we have to be
Interesting.
very, very, how do I say this? We have to be careful because we pulled him out of a great job. So we have to act responsibly. We can't just act hastily, but at the same time, we got business to do. We got, uh, we got, we got, money to make for this platform. We've got investors to, um, to impress, I guess you can say, and we're going to go raise more money. We're going to need to show some milestones and some growth.
Mhm.
Mm, I think that's a great bridge for where Lori's expertise comes in. Lori, do we keep this person? Do we let them go? I know you're getting some guidance from up above, but are you going to push back?
I am inclined to push back because of what I'm hearing from my colleagues on the set, Robyn
Mm,
and Avetis. And let me just say, I personally deeply appreciate this process that we're in right now, which is to hesitate before we terminate and do some
mm,
reflecting. And Robyn and Avetis are making it very easy for me to also look at what might be my part of responsibility here as the director. Because I remember when Robyn and Avetis brought Pat to me, I distinctly told them, I do not have a round the clock person to serve as Pat's training wheels. I need
Mm,
Pat to get scrappy. He's not going to have all those layers that Avetis was describing. But I did say, I've got a more experienced person that Pat can shadow. When I look at it now, that more experienced person was very busy. And so I'm going to check in with them, but I have a feeling that Pat's shadow experience to come up to speed was probably pretty loose, too
mm,
loose, perhaps, for Pat to be in a good position to deal with this really difficult client where we almost need like a horse whisperer. I mean, this client is famous for being quite erratic and quite a hothead in how whatever's going on in the marketplace, they're going to take that strong emotion and they're going to fire it at whoever interacts with them from our team. So I'm in a very good mode right now where I'm more inclined, Tiffany, as I
mhm.
stated, to figure out how to advocate for Pat and see what we can do to patch up the mess.
Mm. Okay, so what I'm hearing, I love all of this that's happening in this meeting. And it sounds like there's a solid plan. We're not looking to fire, we're looking at systemic breakdowns as a foundational fix. And we're also looking at looking at what we need to do to fix our show Bible based on what Avetis and Robyn said. I'm curious
Mhm.
from the audience, this is your opportunity to weigh in again. Let's think about activation gaps. If we could shift our minds there as we're in this conversation, what causes your talent engagement and performance to fail? I mean, you're watching this scene unfold. Our technical team, could you please pull up poll number 2 for our audience? Is it inconsistent messaging of key expectations or the show Bible with the whole team? Is it hiring initiatives without clear alignment? Is it inefficient onboarding, as was mentioned here, leader misalignment causing confusion, or is it all of it? Now, I want you to answer it from your, yes, okay, we see here. All of the above. All of the above. Absolutely. Thank you so much for weighing in. Now, as we begin to shift the conversation and
And
move
actually,
this,
Tiffany, I'm going to interrupt for a second because I would love to see in the chat how
uh-huh.
many of us
Yeah.
go back to the season or the episode before
Mm,
to see where we fell down as a
Mm.
leadership team.
Mm.
So
Wow.
give me some information in that chat, right? Because I looking at this simulation, it's easy to say, okay, we got to go back to the writing room. Let's see where the process failed Pat.
hmm
But what I see very often, I'm going to stop sharing the poll for a second. But what I see too often is we go into react mode and we don't take that time to go back. And so, for those of us in the audience, just a yes or no, do you go back when things go sideways? Or do you move forward assuming that you're working off of a stable foundation? So just give us some feedback on that. Didn't mean to interrupt, Tiffany, but
No,
inquiring minds.
this is what the executive
Okay.
producers do, right? You on the show.
I can only
I
stay on mute for so long.
I love this. Always go back. Yes, go back. Look for the root causes. But all too often, I'm sure our casting crew in the writer's room would agree. Sometimes our leaders, either we're more concerned with the client's reaction, we're more concerned with how much money we're going to lose, that we don't go back to the decision point. All right. And we just want to we're going to cut the show, throw it in the fire, get rid of the person, all of the things. But here, I love hearing the consensus around going back. All right, so we've collaborated over our two options here, keep or go bass, recast. Now you're watching the scene in the story unfold, and let's see more here in the chat is blowing up. We really appreciate that. I think we need to go back to the writer's room now. And as we go back to the writer's room, we've seen the breakdown, we've heard the all of the flaws, we've seen we heard about the communication gaps. So what are those foundational pieces? We either cut the scene or rewrite the script. Those are our two options. cut the scene or rewrite the script. And it sounds like rewriting the script is where we are at. So I'm going to give each of our subject matter expertise to weigh in on what that rewrite looks like. They'll each have several minutes to walk us through things through their lens. Robyn, let's start with you.
Okay. It's interesting because I think instead of a rewrite, I call it an edit. One of the things that was the most powerful person in the writing team for a soap opera is the editor. Because the
Mm,
editor has to know everything that's ever happened in the show. And they have the job of looking at every single script and editing it for consistency and making sure that it fits the history and all of this. So I always think that what we all need to do is edit. And I have a framework for edit. It is E, to examine the situation from the outside. It's almost as if what we were just doing. It's like you are on a drone and you're looking down at your organization or the conversation and you see yourself there and you see everything else that's happening. So you examine the situation really just coldly. And then you want to decode, and the most important thing to decode is communication styles. And that's something that we did not work on. I am
mm,
a big fan of communication assessments before, during, and after because people change once they're in. I have a big array of different assessments that I use depending on the person. So decoding the communication style, and when you do that, you get to understand what the stands for. You understand and interpret the impact of what is being said versus the intention of what is meant because our
mm,
communication styles are so different. Pat has a specific communication style and he was exhibiting that, but he was talking to somebody with a completely different style in his leadership and in the client. And so we can't deal with the client side. We can train Pat to recognize what that client style is in the future so that if you give a great assessment like the DISC assessment, the Myers-Briggs, the Colby, any assessment that you can use to then understand some self-awareness for yourself and then other awareness of who it is that you're speaking to or that person is speaking to. So you examine the situation, you decode the communication styles, you interpret for the impact versus the intention, and then you get trained or you work with some how to translate, the T is for translate, that language into language that lands better. So that if we had had Pat's communication assessment in front of us and he went to that leader, Pat would have been trained to know what that leader's needs and triggers are so that he could speak directly to those needs and triggers and not be so outraged. And that leader, in turn, would have known Pat's needs and triggers.
mm,
That leader would have put Pat and prepared Pat better for that client. And so that edit method goes for the micro and the macro. We need to do that for our whole businesses as well. Our organization, step back and examine the situation. What are the communication styles within the organization? How can we interpret the intention, what are in our values, what are in our mission statement? How do we interpret that intention to make the impact that we really wanted to make, not just the impact that sits on a website? And then how do we translate it into a language that it will land with people? We probably could have done a better communication job with our clients with just communication. We're moving into another branch. This is what's happening. There's going to be changes. Anything, just getting in front of it and editing that conversation is going to be really, really important. And the other thing that we didn't do is like, and I see a lot of companies do and not do, is like, you know, uh, we were focused on Pat. We were focused on Pat and the possible people who were in with him. And so a lot of times people will spend a lot of money and a lot of training on giving Pat that assessment, on giving Pat the resources and the training to speak better. But then we don't make our senior leaders go through the same training.
Mhm.
And what will happen is Pat will see a senior leader doing something that he just did, that he was trained not to do. And it's like, well, why do I need to do it this way when my senior leader isn't doing it? So it's really important to continually make everyone's behavior have the impact that we want it to have, and to prioritize continually aligning. Like I said, that Joe Bible needs to be updated all the time. Is it aligned with the current thing that we're doing? Is it aligned with our current customer base? We can't just let it sit on a website. And onboarding is essential. So the communication will be a part of onboarding, and the other part of onboarding is just getting him really ingrained in the culture that we're trying to do, and continually shifting our focus. When we shift our focus, communicating what that focus is.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear from you, Avetis.
Yes, yes. First of all, it's funny, Robin and I keep talking about alignment. It's interesting, right? Both options we talked about are very expensive. And I don't just mean money wise, because there's an old saying, if you can write a check, you don't have a problem. The
Mm.
problem is that money doesn't solve all these problems. Now we've got, everything is falling behind. You got pissed off customers, you got pissed off executives, his team, he's being passive aggressive towards his team. So we've got bigger issues than money expense. I'm talking time, resources, and all this other stuff. You know, I hate to go back, but I think a cheaper path is finding alignment before the hire, right? Had we again understood our environment better, we wouldn't have hired based on a resume or based on interviews, and interviews are flawed. Interviews remind me of it's dating. People, both sides are bringing the best part of themselves to the show, if we can use that in this context, and everybody performs well, then it works out. What's missing is both sides aren't talking about the really what they need and what they are and aren't, what they're trying to convince each other that they're a good fit. Especially in a situation like this where this person's so impressive, we want to put on a show so we can get him or her, right? And so I think, again, the cheaper path, the smarter path would have been is if we as a team had gotten together and done this. So what now what, right? We're here. As much as I would love HireCloud to come in and fix it and earn money to feed our kids, I think I have a different option. So option one is obviously to the recast and move on.
Yeah.
Option two would just be mentor this person through it and just struggle through it and hope it works out. I think an option three could be we have a very honest conversation with Pat and see what angle he's seeing it from. Maybe he agrees and says, "Hey, this is a huge mismatch. What do we do about it?" And together we can make a decision. I think he should be part of the conversation, and we need to be very honest about what went wrong and what can't happen again, and what we think. And then based on that, I still believe if he's the right person in the wrong seat, we just move him to the right seat. Potentially because he's strategic and not technical or hands-on, there could be a great role for him in that role, away from the client-facing component, away from the hands-on technical stuff, more strategic, more high level. And we then, knowing what we know now, actually go out and find that client-facing, fast-paced, um, hands-on individual who has proven to go from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, in smaller, more faster-paced environments. I think that's definitely an option, and I will definitely support that decision. And then hopefully we can create a great scenario for Pat in the right role. That's my recommendation.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, Lori, you've heard again. We'd love to hear from you as we sort of bring this decision making about what to do here. We'd love to hear
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah. Well, as we're surfacing and can't wait to hear more from the audience, the participants today, we've got several options here. So all of this dialoguing is around what seems like the best option. Something that comes to me when I think about Pat is very specifically, it looks like Pat needs help on how to remain composed and not essentially lose his mind if he's got a client who's hammering on him, right? And guess what, Tiffany? When I consult the show Bible, one of the things I found is an operating principle of retain and retrain. So if I think about that, it might not be that Pat needs, as we've all said, because of his experience and resume, a complete retraining. However, could I give him some practical education on how to remain composed so that, as Avetis has been speaking to, we don't lose this enormous investment that we've made so far to uncover Pat as a talent. So guess what? I happen to have a seasoned person who's on the team who would be willing to do some mentoring with Pat. This person is skilled in our industry, but they also, little known fact, while they were in college at the University of Chicago, they did all the improv classes at Second City. And improv drilling absolutely gives a person a lot of skill in being able to manage the unexpected. So right now, Tiffany, that's my best bright idea, which I think would serve also some of the immediacy that we're feeling, that we want to get Pat the guidance and practical help that he needs. And then I want to have a useful, easy to understand plan to take back to executive leadership to see if I can spare Pat's job. And I think this could be a good direction to go.
This is pretty powerful. What I'm hearing, just to recap, intent versus impact, the edit method. We've heard assess before you hire. We talk about accountability at the very top of the house when it comes to leadership behavior and misalignment between what's written in some of our playbooks, our strategic plans and missions and all of that, and the behaviors we're seeing in real time. We've talked about the cost of misalignment. Avetis talked about that, right? Sometimes it's not just hard dollars, but it's reputation, time, resources, all the things, and making some of those decisions way before you start dating, right? Let's get really clear on what we're looking for, what good looks like. And then also what I just heard from Lori, you retain and retrain, right? Mentoring. I mean, as we start to think about all of what you just heard, there's truly a difference between engagement and activation. Avetis, you're looking at fit. Robyn is all about the vibe. And Lori is thinking about the growth path. And when these three are all aligned, we're not managing a crisis. You are directing a high performing team and culture. And if you find yourself in a startup scene like this one, where time is your scariest resource, you might lean toward Avetis casting speed. But if you're in a legacy scene where trust is everything, Lori's mentorship model is your anchor. And now that we really understand the trade-offs, let's move to our first working session.
Actually, I would like to, as the executive of this group, on
Yes.
behalf of Mark and I've got a question for our experts.
Yes.
So, Lori, you've come to me. You have given me your mantra of hesitate before you terminate. And I'm thinking about that. And Mark and I are thinking about that. But here's my question. Pat has pulled the plug. He knows he didn't act in a way that's in alignment with the company. Shouldn't have lost his shizzle in front of the client. Shouldn't have detonated in front of his peers, thinking that he got left high and dry. So we've got some trust to rebuild. No matter how much mentorship, no matter how many show Bibles we read, and no matter how much we go back to leadership and say, let's get on the same page. So you guys see this every day. And I think, our guests that are participating in this scene see it every day, where trust can, be built and destroyed like that. And so how do we get Pat to want to come back and play versus sitting in a seat in the way he is right now, which is I'm just going to stay under my desk for a hot second and see what happens. So how do we get him reactivated? What are some of your pro tips for that? And I'd love to throw that to all three of our experts in the room today.
Well, one of the things that we know about this client is they are keto. And so we already immediately, within 24 hours, we sent them this big, glorious basket to their office of keto friendly, great stuff, like over the top to demonstrate to the client, we know you.
All
We're
the meat you
giving
can
you
handle.
love. We're giving you some love, right? That damage control was frankly a little more immediate than dealing with Pat. Of course, Pat, we took off client facing role. And let me just say, to Pat's credit, we've been giving him tons of analytics work to do, which is very vital to how we operate. And we've been thinking we've been giving him 8 hours of work to do, but he's working through lunch. He's getting it all done within 5 or 6 hours. So we feel so far we've had some very good indications from Pat that Pat is humbled by this, wants to be a team player, wants to demonstrate by going above and beyond to his colleagues that he's in this for the long haul. And he really has a lot of passion about the mission of the company and the type of products that we're doing. And Avetis reminded me of this. This was a very desirable career switch for Pat. So far, he's giving all signs that he wants to rebuild that trust. And that is very important. It doesn't feel to us so far on the set that we're inflicting or enforcing this on Pat. This is the direction that Pat is willing to go. So we want to support that.
Okay.
I feel a little bit differently. I'm sorry, Robyn, you want to go or should I? Mine is a
Well,
quick one.
it's a piggyback. What's interesting is like once I did find out Pat's communication style, it was really clear to me what how to rebuild trust. You know, Pat was, if anybody knows the disc, it was a very high C in disc, which is all about fact finding and organization and focus and all of that stuff. So, and it's very low on communication skills and warming up to people and getting people to like you. And so, one of the things that Pat and I worked on was looking at how you can communicate, how you can shift and change the way that you communicate, the words that you use. We did role plays, we've done role plays, and with that amount of attention, Pat felt cared for. So instead of just like putting him on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, what we did was we gave him coaching. And we brought in an outside executive coaching who worked on his communication skills, who worked on how he could communicate better. And the other thing that we did is that we inspired Pat to do something that I call feeding people's bank accounts, which is to just give a shout out to somebody when they least expected it. You know, like I love the way that you showed up at that meeting. And we started doing that with Pat a lot too. We love the way that you did this. We love the way you did that. It was not expected. It's not doing a one-on-one. It's just what you do to really start to rebuild trust.
Well, I completely agree with both of those things that Lori and Robyn recommend doing or have done. I still think this individual is in the wrong seat. I feel like everybody's moved towards retaining and rebuilding, but I think those skills, those soft skills that you all are mentoring him for, I think it's wonderful and it's admirable and I think necessary in this case. And I still think he's a phenomenal person and a potentially still a good fit for our company, but I think he needs to be recast into a different role because he just can't keep up with the pace. He's just not technical enough. We underestimated how many people he had. I think he had 50 plus people reporting to him with, four senior managers and tech leads and he's over his head technically. So if we can move him to a strategic role and all those skills you're teaching him I think are wonderful, right? All of those things are going to not only help him in this new role if we recast him, but also in his future careers. This role needs someone more hands-on from a smaller, faster, more nimble startup type of environment that we frankly are from this platform perspective. In other words, we've taken our old company and we've created a tech platform and don't have the right person leading it. That's my thoughts.
So I'm going to take a contrarian position. I do like the bias to keep people. I think we want to do everything we can to try to keep people because we put a lot into hiring them. And what I'm a little concerned about here is emotional intelligence should be a strong component of somebody at this point in their career and this high level of position and what we're compensating this person for. I think it's very difficult to change emotional intelligence that quickly. And when person has had a lower level of emotional intelligence in their career. So I would be cautious about retaining them, but I certainly would want to do everything to assess and try to retain them. But I wouldn't retain them if I really didn't feel this person had enough emotional intelligence in whatever role they were in. Because at this level, whatever role they're in is still a role of impact.
Agreed.
Thank you so much.
Well, now that we have muddied the waters enough, Tiffany, you're back to where you're going. Because this is never an easy solution. So back to you.
Yes, but I find it very interesting that Avetis, I appreciate you doubling down on what from an organization, what our position should be. That we need to have some commitment to our people, right? And we also need to take accountability for some of our decisions, especially if from a systemic viewpoint, we know we don't have our systems in place where we didn't do good by our people. So recasting gives us an opportunity as an organization to do right and to also lay the foundation for the future. So recasting is your vote. That seems to be where
Yes.
we're at. We're not letting the person go. They left Fang. I mean, they left Facebook to come here, and now we're going to let them go. I mean, there definitely is a role. High potential sometimes often become low performers when they're not cast in the right role. So moving
Exactly.
them somewhere else on that 9 box is important. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so the writers are back in the room. And we have a really good opportunity at this point to begin to weigh in with the audience again. So our executive producers gave us some insight. Thank you both. We appreciate that. Our team is pushing back from a leadership perspective on what to do. But it's an opportunity now for the group to weigh in. And I'd love to hear from our audience. Which area do you want to strengthen from our session today? I want you to think about the hiring for alignment, culture and behavior alignment, in-house career mentoring. So poll number 3 will hit the screen. And we're interested. Is it around Avitis's thought or tightening up some of our processes? And is it around aligning behaviors and cultural norms, as Robyn mentioned, or is it strengthening this culture of mentorship and early experiences, as Lori mentioned? And as the votes are coming in, I'm curious from you, Robyn, what do we need to be doing with the show Bible here?
Well, that clearly needs an update. And the thing is, just like mission statements, I've gone into companies and I've asked them, what's your mission statement? And they don't know. They have to go check with their website.
Mm.
It's like, so what it has to do is like really it needs to be disseminated among the people. And I really feel like it should be a group project.
Mm.
I feel like everyone should have an input into what is in the show Bible because a lot of times things get under the water. There are those norms that are not mentioned. There are
Mm.
those unwritten rules that happen that don't get written down anywhere. And so a new person comes in, it's like, oh no, you never use that. I was working with a company once and it's like, oh, everybody was faxing things, but nobody had a fax machine. So in the show Bible was like, you need to fax, but nobody had a fax machine. So it's
Mm.
like little things like that that need to be updated and the why behind why people wanted to fax. So,
Mm.
so I think as a group message, like the people that are working there a long time, it's like, what are some of the rules that are happening that nobody actually even talks about? Those
Mm.
secret rules. And I
Mhm.
think that that's what needs to be happening is to have a consensus to brainstorm and create something that is alive and well and that everybody understands and everybody can embody.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think our polls are in. And it looks like half the room agrees with you around around tightening up hiring practice, aligning behaviors of cultural. Interestingly, I'm sorry, I take that back. Interestingly, most are torn between hiring practices and culture and mentorship. This thought around behavior, aligning norms and behaviors, people are seeming to shy away from that. But what I'm hearing is that that is an anchor where we really need to be going. It's an opportunity for all of us maybe to shift our thoughts around maybe what we have done and maybe what we should be doing when we're beginning to recast and think about the gold standard for our organization. All right. So now we have everyone back in the room, and it's time to take some action. We have a two-step process here. And we're going to move to this interaction. So I put a note in the chat. We don't want to put anybody on Front Street. We're looking for volunteers. And you see, I got my hand. Raise your virtual hand if you would be willing to come center stage with our casting crew, our writing crew, as we begin to think about working together here. In this first step, we're defining the gold standard. And if we were writing the perfect script for your team, what would great look like? Because remember, we have to go back and we want to do this all over the right way. Okay. So I'm going to have our experts weigh in on the ideal state of in their respective pillars. And as they speak, I want you to look for gaps in your own show Bibles. And if you're willing to come up, and again, team, we're looking at the gold standard. We're looking at um, yes, that's what we're looking for here. And then if you're willing to come up and share a challenge that you are having in real time or a question that you have, our team would be willing to answer that from their perspective. So we're looking for some volunteers, show of hands here.
And Tiffany,
And
as we wait for some volunteers to kick in, I do have as and what we do want is for everybody in the audience to spend some of this time thinking about what does good look like within your organization.
mm,
60% of you chose all of the above when we identified the normal dysfunctions within an organization in terms of talent activation. So we can't solve everything in once. And if you had to
mhm.
pick a lane, really spend a few minutes today just thinking about, okay, forget about where we are today, but what does good look like? Now, I'm going to hone in on something I see happen in our client situation almost daily. So for our panel, for our experts, this is the hot seat I want you to think about and coach through. Part of our corporation's requirements is that there is a panel interview. So once they get through the basic screening, then we've got a bunch of people, probably 5 or 6 that are sitting on a panel, and we all have to interview this person at the same time. They have a presentation that they have to give to show that they get the gist of what we're doing. This is very, I mean, he's just shaking his head like all the time. Now, here's what happens. Every single human being in that panel interview has a different perspective of what good looks like. And so when you ask them all, okay, what are we hiring for? And when do we get to say yes? You're going to get 6 different answers. So knowing this is a norm in terms of how this works, and I want to see some hands up with our participants in terms of your next hot seat question for our group. But how do you get everybody on the same page? What are some of the best practices?
Lori, you're muted.
One would be to have, I mean, at the risk of stating something obvious, but with one of my clients I'm coaching with, this was not obvious, is to have even a simple 1-page statement of criteria. And I can align this with something where I side hustle the last few decades is as a fine arts official for competitive high school speech. Where I am, there are 13 separate categories. And so when you go to a speech tournament, you're probably going to judge 4 different categories. And every round, I always bring up what is the stated criteria for this category, because to me, that's just. It shows the student I'm speaking to and I'm advising you on how well you're doing against these 6 things for your category. And again, it doesn't need to be 78 pages, but something where there is some standardization that everyone can see and be weighing against. That's one idea.
I have a couple. Um, One, I think we all have historically depended on job descriptions. The problem is back in the day, job descriptions were created by an HR person and then recycled for 10 years because no one wants to put that. Now with, all chat GPT and all this, they're just created by prompts. But create a success description before you even go looking for the person. Where is this, what type of person do we want? What type of person don't we want? What do we actually expect them to accomplish? That's one good idea. Second good idea is to have a very, very um, uh, how do I say this? Consistent hiring method. So if Tammy does all the first interviews, Lori and Robyn should not ask the same question she did, and each interview should be very, very different. And then the panel should be with everyone. And we all should be using a same scoring system. Our scoring system is 4 is a hell yes. I'll fight to have this person on my team. 1 is a hell no. Um, I will fight not to hire this person. A 2 is a soft no. I can be convinced otherwise. A 3 is a soft yes. I can be convinced otherwise. There are some people that said there only should be two criteria, hell yes and hell no. There shouldn't be anything in the middle, but these are some things that if we're all at least on the same page on the success description and how we score interviews and how consistently we hold these interviews, um, that alone will eliminate 80% of the wrong people. And also the core values. I think Robyn was probably going to speak to the mission statement. How about the core values? Are we talking about our core values? Are we talking about our environment openly with the person? Because we can just properly scare them away if they're the wrong person.
I like to hop in with you here, Avetis, on
Yeah.
this one. As we start to think about like what it is we're looking to hire, competency was one of the things that we didn't really talk about. Like how competent are they? And one of those FANG organizations, they have an amazing process in which
Yes.
they use that SMART method, in which as the interviewers are going through the whole process, they're looking for the person to demonstrate competency across the values and across what the job's going to be, what they're going to be performing in the job. And so interviewers are taking a different perspective as they're now looking at candidates. It's not just how great you look on paper, but you have to really be able to demonstrate competency across these areas. Are you seeing that that is sort of a gold standard that maybe the rest of us should be looking at?
I don't think so. I don't think so because they're hiring for their massive environment, and they just have a different way. People interviewing at these Fang or Mambo or whatever now, Mama and all kinds of different names are coming out. But the way that they interview is almost like an Ivy League school. And the people trying to go into these Ivy League schools, colleges, like for these, they practice and study for 6 months to a year,
Mm.
right? And then they get the job or they get into the school. It doesn't mean they're great employees. It doesn't mean they're great fits. It just means they played the game properly. They studied, they
I'm going to
practiced.
break in here now because I
Yeah.
had to coach my son to 2 Ivy League schools. So
See?
I know what that process is like.
Right?
The thing is, it is a matter of coaching, but sometimes also, I must admit, it's a matter of bringing stuff out that they forget that they have. And I feel
Mm.
like that's a big issue nowadays with a lot of the younger people. I feel like they have value, they have intention, they have input that they just don't know how to express and verbalize. So I want to give a little bit of plug for some of the coaching for the Ivies. But yeah, a lot of people get in that shouldn't. But I want to go back to what your idea was with the grading system of Vetus, because I think that that's brilliant. Because to your original question, Tiffany or Tammy, no one is going to agree on the same person because we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So we're
Mm.
all judging according to our criteria, no matter what is written on a piece of paper. It all comes down to our own personal criteria. And so we have to find a system that works against that. And I feel like having that, like that checklist, and then look at them all together and see what it is. And the other thing that I'm thinking is that instead of even success or what are we actually hiring for? We're actually hiring for what impact do we want to have? What
Mm.
value do we want to bring to this position and to this position in the company. And so when we're thinking about like, yeah, and that does is similar to success, but is this person going to have the impact that we need at this point? And that's why I really feel like with the even with getting together to get together to create whatever you want to call your show Bible or your mission statement or whatever, to have it be an entire leadership input, then you have a little bit of everybody in there. And so it's not so it's a little bit easier to agree on criteria. But having that check mark, I think, is going to make a big difference because then you just weigh the best possible scenario.
Yeah, there's I'd also add that with all of the criteria that's set, if you're going to do that, we also could, since there are varying opinions, decide on which one of the criteria gets weighted. So
Right.
you have the this is what we must have, but this is the one the most desirable. It gets the most weight among all of them. So as we're
Yeah.
each going through the process of actually going through the interview and putting our scores in, there's a weighting factor, and that takes away some of that subjectivity around our own personal lens for the candidate.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
the panel should never be the first thing. You
I'm
know,
sorry, say that again.
the panel should never be the first step for the interviewee. It's got to be those small ones
Yep.
first and then to the panel, like
Yeah.
Avetis was.
Which I
Awesome.
think makes, just to tag in here for a second, makes it even more important for everyone to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Alignment.
We've got a client recently that was doing a very senior executive level search, very difficult to find. And the person self-selected out because it essentially looked like that organization did not have their act together. And you ask the same question to five different people, you get different answers. And the market's tight for these types of senior thought leaders. You can blow a good candidate after spending hours with this person, building trust and getting them excited about the mission and what you're trying to deliver. So I think even more important, if our audience members do have panel interviews as part of their intake process, it's even more important. They're usually at the end. That's normal because then they've got enough context. But man, you can blow it as an organization because they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them.
Thank you so much. We love having the weigh in from our executive producers.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
now
Tiffany, I love to quickly weigh in. One of the things we do is to study success in organizations. Every organization is somewhat different, and a lot of things can be theoretical. But when you study the top performers over a period of time and you look at the criteria of those people, you start to see there's a common denominator of what makes for a successful hire in a specific company.
thank you so much. Now
My pleasure.
before we move, we've had this reality check. We've talked about the gold standards. Any final thoughts on gold standards? Um, because we're going to do we're looking at our current take right now. Okay. So we're going to use the start, stop, continue framework, right? What is the one thing, and I want you to shift our audience, I want you to shift. What is the one thing that you need to stop doing immediately because it's triggering um, this a negative response in your team? What is the one thing you need to start doing to drive activation? And let's really get really honest here. Let's use the chat because we're going to rewrite the ending of our story. It's time to rewrite. So, what do we need to start doing, stop doing, continue doing? And we want to hear from you from your perspective of what's happening where you work in the workplace. Lori, I see you're trying to talk.
Oh, I'm just looking at the chat and seeing what people bring in.
All right. And it's time for the hot seat. We have a few minutes left. And I was told we're going to call this the love seat. Did the group, did our casting team, we agree on the love seat? Start, top, continue. One thing you have to address in your organization today. All right. Thank you, Tammy. Any candidates? Any takers for our hot seats? This is your
I'd love
moment.
to see.
Yeah, we
Who is
just
that?
mean an opportunity if you're hearing some things that are bringing to the surface for you. Wow, this is a problem at my company. we invite you to go ahead and just draw upon Robyn, Avetis, myself as well, by extension, Tiffany, Mark, and Tammy. And we would love to understand your dilemma and give you any useful thoughts.
Or if you have thoughts for us that we've gotten totally wrong, like
Oh,
maybe
that
you
would
can
be.
school us on something.
Pop that in the chat too, that our casting crew missed something as we rewrite our last scene. All right. Well, it's time for us to regroup. And we've done the work. Now it's time for us to think about rewriting this scene. I think this has been an amazing session. We've had a master class in human behavior and how we move things forward. I'm going to invite our SMEs to kind of bring us home. So, Lori, you've had some real world experience with a pet, and I'd love to hear about the resolution here. How did this story get rewritten? We'll let you take the stage for a moment. We want to hear.
All right. So the Pat story, we fictionalized a bit for all of you today, but it is drawing from something real world that I was directly involved in when I was an employee engagement and global philanthropy programs manager in a large multinational corporation. So in this exact scenario, our Pat, which was a female, a big important client yelled at her, just like unleashed an unbelievable, unanticipated amount of rage because of something that was going on in the markets, and their company was losing a lot of money. And our Pat yelled right back, like pretty much matched that anger level. And this made our Pat, I would say, kind of una desperada as far as like this lawless criminal screaming at clients, which you get it, like it rippled across the department. Everybody knew about it. And she was notorious, both good and bad. You know, people were like, dang, I dreamed about yelling at clients that are being dreadful to me. I love what she did. So I kind of split people, right? But obviously, we couldn't let the behavior continue. So that's also a true story that we had this really polished person at the same desk. It was in California, who was able to immediately start mentoring our Pat on being composed, doing communication exercises, improv drills, plus assigning Pat, because they worked together for 12 months, to watch documentaries about individual marine biologists who go out and study sharks for a living. Because the mentor felt like that's sort of comparable to working at this trading desk in terms of people who are dealing with perceived threats to their survival nonstop. And flash forward, our Pat ended up sharing the whole saga about a year later at a big department luncheon. That
Wow.
was the theme was mentorship. And guess what? Like 30% of the people in the audience listening to the story were going like this. And then queued up and talked to her afterwards and said, gosh, you know, I was really floundering myself when I was in my 20s and knew in this very intense, high pressure, high stakes environment. And I wish somebody would have cared for me. I wish somebody would have given me some help and some guidance and patience. You know, basically saying you're very, very fortunate. So part of that tale organizationally for all of you is that the tactic that we employed showed the rest of the department, by extension, the team and the division, because again, you can imagine the story was notorious and everybody knew about it, that we were a culture of we've got your back. And had we operated otherwise, we maybe could have sent a message of, you better watch your back. You know, there's a lot of zero tolerance around here. I'm not saying that there's no place for zero tolerance. Obviously, you got to look at the individual behavior as we've been discussing. But yes, that from the toolkit of employee talent development, that was something that worked for us, for that person, who, by the way, was extremely willing to be mentored and deeply desired to salvage their professional life and remain in the organization. That was very important.
Thank
So
you so
Lori,
much.
you've got some pro tips on assigning mentors that are not normal. Because most of the time people roll their eyes when they hear mentors, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here we go again, right? Somebody's showing up unprepared and all that kind of fun stuff. And so share some of your pro tips with our audience today, because they are things that we can all learn from right away.
Yeah. Well, I'll build upon some things I stated earlier. It needs to be precise. You got to think like a surgeon. You know, if somebody's having problems with a specific organ, you don't open up their whole chest cavity and look at all the organs. I say this as someone raised by a surgical nurse mom. You just go in and preferably laparoscopically and just deal with that one thing. So you want to be precise, and within that, their mentee or protege needs to be desiring to get that help. So they need to bring humility and commitment. And then when you identify and find that mentor who has that exact knowledge and skill set that the mentee is lacking, there you go. There's the positive chemistry, because the mentee is going to be saying, oh my God, I want to emulate this person. I am honored and committed to learning from them. So be precise. Do not match glibly. That's one of my key principles, because those mentoring associations, they oftentimes, you know it, Tammy, they just fall to the wayside. They don't really gain any traction because it's too vague. It's too glib.
All right. Any final thoughts on rewriting the script, Avetis? Robyn?
Well, I had a comment for Tammy. She said something very interesting and true, but I'll give you the other side. She said, you know, these guys needed to get their stuff together because people were pulling out of the process. Although I agree with you, great people will pull out of processes and it'll cost you an amazing candidate because you're a mess. That is an absolute problem. Or they did such a good job of describing their actual environment that the person self-selected out, rightfully so. Like they should have, because that individual would have come in and had a pat situation. So those are just my thoughts to look at that exact scenario in two different lenses.
Well, and that is a really good indication of Vetus, in terms of the hiring process is exactly how it's going to feel like to work for that company.
Yep.
So don't think there's some pixie dust in the background that's going to make everything, you know, the way you think it's going to be.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, and as far as like it wasn't a Pat situation, but I really feel like there is hope for a lot of for anybody with the right connection, the right mentor, the right coach. You know, I just finished an assignment recently where one of the feedback that was given to this person was she's a cancer to your company. That was from someone who was exiting because of this person. And what I realized is that she wasn't a cancer to the company. She wasn't a villain. When I worked with her as an executive coach, what I realized is that that was what she thought leadership was all about. And I just recently found out that her immediate leader was pretty much like that. So she was getting feedback based on her leadership style, which she was emulating from the person above her who was not given an opportunity for a coaching engagement. Fortunately, with the person who I was coaching, she, with that communication assessment, with the role playing, with the editing, she was really able to, within 6 months, make a 180 change and become a leader that her colleagues trusted and that her direct reports trusted and listened to. So change can happen. And you really want to realize that those senior leaders, they need just as much work as the people that are being complained about.
You
And
know,
don't
I agree with you here. You know, what I'm hearing you say is assessment and level setting, what good looks like at the leadership level is critical. And we all know culture, this conversation around culture, this is not soft, right? Culture is baked in the boardroom and baked and undone at the very top of the house. And so if there's not an alignment around what good really looks like at the leadership level, what I'm hearing you say, Robyn, it filters down. And it reminds me of what W.D. Deming says about, system failures. And it's not the people, it's the system. And in this instance, the system she was put into was creating an outcome or an output. And so you're going to churn out the same kind of leaders if you don't go back at the system level and fix that. So that's an excellent call out. Thank you so much. Was
Yeah.
someone else did I hear someone else about to say something before we move to the next? All right, we have 3 minutes on our wrap. And today, and I want to thank all of you, Robyn, Lori, Avetis, our executive producer, our co-producer, Tammy and Mark. We had an excellent script and an opportunity to look at our theme. You hired stars, you're getting extras. How do you rewrite the scene, the script in your workplace story and unleash all of that talent for innovation? We've given you some tools today with each of our subject matter experts. And I'm curious, what scene in your business will you rewrite first when you go back to work tomorrow? When you finish this call today? We'd love to hear from you. Pop a note in the chat, but each of our speakers have the ability to support you in that process. So if you'll notice here on the screen, there's a QR code in that bottom right. We invite you to scan the code as you start to look at your business through these three lenses. Do you need support at the talent piece? Avitas is there to help us. You're at crossroads and you need to figure out, do you hesitate before you terminate? How do you coach up instead of coaching out? Lori's there to help you with that. And then Robyn, all about the communication, those systems and processes to get the script right. If she's the one you need, please scan a QR code. Each one of our subject matter expertise will be there to support you along the way. And now, as I close out, I want to thank you for allowing me to be alongside you as the showrunner today. And I want to give our stage back to our executive producers and our producers for some closing comments.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. And thanks to all of our speakers to share some of that guidance. And I think I'm with Stephen on the shark documentaries, right? I'm a nature doc lover and I'm a scuba diver. So that definitely resonates with me in terms of how they behave. And I'm a Wall Street girl. So I definitely get both sides of the shark. But here's the reality. When you look at data over the past 5 years, one of the top three categories that middle market executives are concerned most about is what they're calling the talent shortage crisis. We're all focused on the macro disruptions, the micro disruptions, the AI, the shiny objects, everything. But the reality is, those of us who decide to return the humanity back into our business are the ones who are going to thrive over the next 1 to 5 years. And so, what are you doing to stem the tide? What are you doing to be the one to beat when it comes to attracting the best and retaining the best talent? We've got three experts here today that are going to help you leapfrog from needing to fix all of the above, which we saw today, to moving into an organization where your talent is switched on, they're committed, they're invested, and they want the company to win as much as you do. So make sure that you take that time, scan that QR code, and really lean in with one of these experts or all of them in terms of, using those levers to pull within your organization to get you where you need to go. So I'll leave you with that. And then Mark, if you want to close us out, that'd be great.
Yes, thanks everyone. I hope that you don't make this a one-off, that you listen to the recording when we send it. There's going to be notes and summary. This is a very, very critical time in our history of companies. Scan that QR code, talk to an expert, go deeper, and really make this a priority for your organizations and for yourselves.
Thank you. You have just attended another episode of The Young and the Reckless, hosted by the Disrupted Work Reimagine Unconference team. We're so glad that you were with us today. To learn more, again, please scan the QR code, check the chat, and we will see you again. hopefully in a one-on-one as we debrief with your team in moving your organization forward. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.